Welcome everybody, welcome members, welcome to those online. Thank you for taking your time to follow us through our council meeting today, Assets meeting for May 2025. I'd like to ask members to be upstanding and I'll read the council prayer. Thank you. Almighty God, as members of the Rangitikei District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and the advantages we enjoy. We pray that you will give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all the communities in the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people. Amen. Thank you, members. So we will step through the agenda and today's audit paper. Apologies, I have received apologies from Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Lambert and Councillor Duncan. They are so recorded. I'll move from the chair that those apologies be accepted. All those in favour, seconded the worship.
Who was the seconded, yeah?
As worship the Mayor. Thank you, Kezia. Welcome back too. Nice to see you again. That motion is now carried. Public forum, I've not been made aware of any public forum today. Conflict of interest, we're all well aware of those. Please declare at such times as you feel that you may have one with regards to today's proceedings. Bring it to the attention of the chair and a decision will be made accordingly. Confirmation of order of business, again, no indication of change of order of business has been brought to me. Moving on to item 6 is confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. So we will step through that very briefly. As soon as I get to the right page so I can catch up. Sorry, team. My computer seems to have, there we go, we're back online. So working on item 6, confirmation of minutes of the Assets and Infrastructure meeting, Thursday, the 13th of March, 2025, sorry. Looking at page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Just turn my phone off. That'll be a shout at an appropriate venue at a later stage, I'm sure. Apologies for that, people. Okay, if there are no changes or amendments to those minutes, could I have somebody confirm that they are a true and correct record? Looking for a mover. Councillor Wong, thank you. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Charlin, thank you. All those in favour? Against? That motion is duly carried. Item 7 on today's agenda is the follow-up actions list from the Assets and Infrastructure Committee meetings. Pleasing to note that there are a number that have been completed. There is a total of 17 on the page. Rather than stepping through them all, is there any items on the follow-up actions list that members have identified in their pre-reading that they would like to seek further clarification on, particularly regarding the status comments? Your worship, the Mayor.
Yes, item number 12, future options for proposed alternate water source Taihape. We're arranging a meeting next Tuesday and that is going out and whoever's available to attend. But there is a restricted number of people, I think, that can be part and parcel of that.
Your worship, where is that meeting being held?
It's arranged by Matt Thomas, Taihape. It's a property that they have some degree of jurisdiction over. And there's been a little bit of frustration that this is carried on. And I said, well, at least I'll go and have a look at it.
Thank you. Just to refresh, and for those online, item 12 that His Worship the Mayor is referring to The line item is future options for a proposed alternate water source for Tai Happy. That is something that is being considered. And thank you for that update, Your Worship. Are there any other items that members would like to raise with regards to the follow-up actions list? Councillor Loudon, item number, please.
Item 5,
Item 5.
Calico Line pathway. Getting a lot of comment as to when it is starting. They see the peaks, but they don't see any action.
That item is covered, councillor, later in today's agenda, but I would, as we do have Mr. Darren Black here, who's our roading manager on behalf of councillors, any comment that you would like to raise at this stage?
We've delayed due to what timeframes now. There were some delays last month and the month before, which has pushed us into maybe not a great time for construction. So we're going to kick off in November. So comms going out this week to residents.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Loudon, is it?
Thank you, yes.
Suffice? Thank you. Any other items, again, specifically to the follow-up actions list? Looking around the room. I'm not seeing any. Once again, thank you to staff for the work that's been done in that space. It is pleasing to see the number that have got completed listed beside them. So thank you for that. Moving on to item L. So could I move that the follow-up actions list be received? Looking for a mover, councillor Carter. Thank you. Looking for a seconder, wish of the mayor. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 8, Chair's report. I have not circulated a Chair's report, but all I would like to note very, very briefly is the amount of work that council and staff have been doing around particularly our local water done well work that is in a follow-up meeting this afternoon. Now, whilst that has consumed a significant amount of our time in numerous meetings, Wanganui, Palmerston North, Ruapehu, as well as our own meetings in here, we can't lose sight of the fact that business as usual outside local water does well does need to continue. And I refer to all the other things that we're involved in the asset space, parks, reserves, community buildings, roadings, some of our building projects and things which are still sitting in the background. So it's a challenging time across the board, but as a committee, there is still a significant amount of work to do. And we need to just treat business as usual as best we can as we follow through other discussions on particularly around that local water done well. So probably the only comment from me would be nothing more than that. And again, thank you for your time in those significant number of meetings that have been held. So if you want to call that a verbal report, I'll move from the chair that be accepted. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Sharlin, thank you. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Moving on to item 9, reports for decisions. Turning now to our Chief Operating Officer, Anno, to just step us through that, which again touches on some of these other items I was just referring to. That work does continue in the background. So thank you, Anno. I'll pass to you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll do what we do with every of these updates. We'll just step through them. So the first one on the list there is the Martin to Bulls wastewater project. The things I really want to draw attention to is the 5 options that we are working on at the moment, which is kind of a mixture between 100% of the discharge going to the river and 100% of the discharge going to land, and a mixture of them in between those 2 points. Something else to pay attention to in this space is we would like to delay the decision of which of those 5 options would be your preferred option for the solution, the final solution, until we have a clear view on the new national wastewater standards. In this specific instance, it will have a very material impact on what that final solution could look like. What we need to think about, though, are the timeframes. Because we've got an election coming up, our decision-making opportunities with council are limited. As far as time concerned, I think our last real opportunity for that would be end of August. At the moment, central government is saying that the new standards should be in place by August. And that's where things will become challenging to get a decision across the line before we have an election and potentially a new council that will then have to come up to speed with where we are. So to avoid a long delay, we would like to get that decision done before the elections, but it will be very tight.
Quick question for me, how much confidence do you have that some form of decision will be coming out of central government to enable us to meet what you've already indicated as a fairly tight timeline?
Well, that's, I don't know. I don't know. The new government are pretty set in their ways and they do push things through. Although this one I would imagine would attract a lot of attention, a lot of submission. I think it will be quite challenging.
If further from me, if I may, if the project has been delayed for the reasons that you've just given, which I would agree are very valid, does that mean we're no longer continuing to cost this at this point in stage, that the whole project's on hold, or do we have some other costs still churning around in the background here?
We are continuing with work in the background. So we are doing all the costing, the high level costing, all the testing. We're collecting all the information to allow you to make a decision. We just need to hang on with that decision until we have a clearer view of what that might look like. So there's no other delays other than getting to the decision. Something else that's worth noting is after our discussion with Horizons on Monday, Horizons indicated that they are aware that it is a space of a lot of uncertainty for councils that's in their position. What they suggested is that we pay attention, that we comply with our existing consents. That would help them a lot. It would help us a lot, and they are aware this is a challenging time for us.
That's encouraging. Your worship, you had a question regarding this matter?
Yes, I think as a council, we should just be aware of the timelines in terms of local water done well. So we not only have to have a decision to the government as to who we effectively form relationships with, but we also have a timeline in delivering an operational planning process around how we will deliver. And I just wonder if there is a need to formally flag this with DIA from all councils, not just us, but to make all councils aware that the government aware that all councils are facing exactly this dilemma. And luckily, the minister has suggested that if you form a collective under a regional entity, the timelines around how you deliver could be extended, but the September deadlines are the September deadlines.
Thank you, your worship. I agree with those comments. And just on that subject, Arno, I note that your report here in today's order paper does reflect everything pretty much that you've just said.
Thank you. It does. I think one thing to add after that comment is we have been in contact with Tamata Arawai with regards to this specific one and the tight position we're in. We have another meeting with them in the next week or two. And what we have in mind, it would be good to get Tamata Arawai, Horizons and us talking in case there are some delays or some difficult thing to get across.
On the tree, Ratna, are we
Yes, so
similarly affected?
Yeah, it's similarly affected, and we just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. We have progressed. We've mentioned before that there could be an alternative solution that could be less costly as far as capex is concerned and opex going into the future. So we've done more work on that. We've done an engineering feasibility to see is it possible to get it done. In other words, this is to connect Ratana to Kaitoki Prison. At the moment, there is a connection between Kaitoki Prison and Wanganui Council. And the idea is that we become a Tradeways customer to Wanganui, and we don't need a consent for Ratana. We can just pump it up to Kaitoki Prison. We've had discussions with Wanganui in principle. They're very happy to accommodate us in that space. We've also had discussions with iwi that own the land, and they are comfortable with us crossing that land to connect. So from an engineering perspective, it is completely feasible to achieve. And then we said, well, let's go one step further and start looking at high level costings and start comparing those. So at the moment, the solution on the table, we have a resolution from council for about $7 million solution. This is coming at quite a lot cheaper than that, at 4.6 million. what we thought of, it could actually add other benefits. We were thinking of Koitiata Beach, that we could potentially consider hooking those up as well and neatening all of that up. I have to say though, when we started these discussions, we had quite a lot of certainty that we would become a CCO, and that really is the space to be in, is to see how we can amalgamate things to generate efficiencies going forwards. The landscape's changed a bit in that space, so we'll keep all of that in mind and keep looking at alternatives and see if there's a cheaper option for us to pursue.
Thank you. Just before I take any questions on that, my apologies, councillor Carter, I missed you. You had your hand up regarding the Bulls Martin centralisation project. We'll take that question now.
Ensco, are they running out of consent to join our system? And is our system able to cope with their outflow?
Ensco actually have their own consent, and that will expire. I can't give you the exact date, but let's say it's within the next 10 years. I think they realize for them to get a new consent by themselves will be challenging, and they are very interested to join us. The big benefit in the position that we're in now, we can design the plant to accommodate whatever we need. So we will design it to accommodate new growth in Bulls, which it will include spatial plan changes into the future, and whichever industry wants to join. So we can accommodate them.
So it could be Ensco Manawatu as well as Ensco Rangatiki.
Good. So we'll tick all those boxes before we finalise the design.
Thank you, councillor Carter, your worship.
And just a point of clarification for those online, we're talking about Ensco Bulls,
Yes.
not Ensco Martin.
Yes, yeah, sorry. But in conjunction, they could also tap into it as well if need be.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarity, your worship. Councillor Wong.
Could I just ask a question about the costings? The reduction if the Ratana wastewater is pumped to Kaitoki. Does that mean we can dispose of the land that we have bought for that purpose, and is that included in the your cost saving calculations?
Correct, we can dispose of that land, but it's not included at the moment. So that could be additional.
Councillor Loudon.
Being a trade-based sort of partner to Wanganui, what costs are involved in that for council on an ongoing basis?
I cannot tell you the exact number at the moment. It depends on so many things. So it depends on how they.
There's a cost.
There's a cost, yes, there is, and there's a risk. So originally we thought if we become one CCO, there will be no cost and no additional risk going to the future. But if that is not the case for whatever reason, then there would be a risk that they could up that price if they wanted to, and we would have to pay it.
Additionally, councillor Loudon, I would suspect that there's pumping costs and other such things which would have to be factored in the whole of life operational costs, which need to be understood.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Okay, so any other items on that before we step to 4.1 Martin Water Project, Martin Water Strategy?
Yeah, thank you very much. Right, so with this one, negotiations around contractual relationships with contractors has been challenging and it's been taking longer than we expected. I think we are close to resolving that and to be in a position to move forward. Once we have all of that signed up and we're in a position that we can move forward, we will then bring back a new timeline to council. That is the one thing we have to be clear about. There will be delays and we will have to go back to the community. I'm talking about myself and council and be sure that everybody understands where we are and what the new timelines will be.
Carol, as Chief Executive, have you got any comment with regards to this matter?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is one that has had a few difficulties put in front of us just recently. And so we've been working to understand what the differences are from GFS and from council staff. So we've met with GFS this week, which was really good to do. And we've suggested to them that we actually get a peer review of this done, and they've agreed to that. So we want confidence and assurance that everything that is in that contract and warranty is actually scrutinised more, and that gives us a little bit of confidence going forward with this contract. So we're about to undertake that now with their agreement. So we'll make sure that once we have that, we provide that update to council. And like Arno said, unfortunately, this probably will mean now there will be delays, but we need to make sure that the new system that we've got is what the public are expecting. And so that's why the peer review is being done in the first place, and then we'll get those new timelines out. Unfortunate, but we need to get it right.
Thank you for that. Just for my own clarification, the delays that I'm hearing have been indicated is that it's really just around the contractual arrangements of the contract, not the process that we have chosen to deal with the issues of odour, smell and taste. So the process is solid. It's just a contractual arrangement. Can I
So
just
the
get some clarity around that?
Yes, the contractual arrangements will be peer reviewed, but we'll also get a process engineer to look at the process as well. So we
Okay.
want to cover both things off.
I don't think anybody in this room will disagree that the importance of getting this matter right, which has been a thorn on the side of the Martin community for some 80+ years. And sadly, nobody wants to see any form of delay. However, a slowdown to just double check in, I think at this point in the process is appropriate. Disappointing, and will be disappointing to many in the community. However, we rightly said from Carol, you as CE, it's a process that we do have to get right, and we do need to double check. We can't get this one wrong. So, as I said, disappointing. But I encourage you to get the necessary people on board to get the project moving and take the necessary checks to give us as councillors a good degree of confidence that what we're looking to achieve in the original strategy will be met. So thank you for that. Any questions with regards to that, Councillor Moore?
Yeah, the thought comes to my mind, are our other projects that we've got running having any difficulties in them? Because, you know, we have delays and delays. I don't know, do we have to peer review every project we're doing, or is it just isolated to this project?
Yeah, I can, no, it's isolated to this one. So this is a unique thing that's occurred, and the others don't have the same issues.
I think with this one, it is a new technology in New Zealand, and it's used across the world. And that's where there's been a bit of further questioning, I suppose, in terms of the new technology, because it isn't understood in New Zealand. And so for us to take a peer-reviewed approach to get another opinion on that is just helpful for us at this stage. So I think, yeah, it is isolated to this project as far as I'm aware.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Anything further on that matter before we look at item 5 of this report? Looking around, not seeing any. Thank you. Martin, Community Facilities. Welcome to the table, Ishwa.
Yes.
So I'm looking to who I'm passing to, but it looks like you, Ishwa. Thank you.
We all know it's broken down into the EOC and the Martin offices and the community hub. For the EOC, we've identified the Ruapehu build as a base design footprint. All the design consultants are engaged. We're working on a soil contamination and geotechnical survey, which should be on site sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So the consultants are on board. We're just in the process of getting the timelines from the contractors to be on site. So this report will form the basis for the designs for the EOC and the Martin offices project. We've also had an initial planning report from the planning consultants, so that's sitting with our planning team. So we're also looking at consenting processes for this one. For the Martin offices, we've done a tender process and we've identified Maycroft as a preferred vendor. So we're now working with them to iron out the contract details. So on a very high level, we're trying to fix 15 million as a contract value, and then we're breaking it down into 2 separable portions where we have about 1.4 million as the design fee, and then the rest 13.5 is the construction budget. But in the council meeting, I'll just bring to the council table a list of breakdowns that we're doing in the separable portions. Even in the design stage, we've kept 4 different stages where we'll come back to council table where the design is progressing, and we'll reestablish that the costs are in line with the 15 million. I will also try and bring a list of exclusions so that everybody is clear that what is included in the entire scope and what is not, which may not be much, but I'll still break it down for the council meeting next week.
Just for clarity, and perhaps for those online, EOC, Emergency Operation Centre, correct? Yeah, just so if we can get the terminology, because it is broken down throughout a lot of our discussions, that is a separate standalone building as part of the overall project,
That's right.
but is a separately costed.
That's
Is that correct?
That's it.
Yeah, okay, so it's.
So that's not sitting within the 15 million, just to
That's correct,
clarify.
but it's an emergency operational
That's
centre, and early indications are that is our first part of this project. Is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Just on your soil contamination and geotechnical, I thought we'd already done that,
No, we're done.
with the Martin office build on this site.
So what we had done was we had only identified, so that was for when we were demolishing that building at the back, right? So we had to go through an Heritage New Zealand process to evaluate. So that time we were just evaluating on the surface level. And then during that stage, we had also done a ground penetrating radar survey to identify what's below, and that was for the tanks. But now in that survey, we've just found out there is something, but we don't know what it is. So we're just doing an extension of that survey to figure out what exactly it is and then find out the extent of soil contamination across the stretch of the site. So it's an extension to what we already did.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thank
It's
you.
okay.
Carol, you happy with
No,
that?
I was just gonna make the same comment. We did very initial survey. And then because like actually I said something was found under there, now we have to go deeper. So they didn't drill right down before, now they have to drill down and do that extra work to find out what it actually is.
And again, just for those online, as we all have these conversations, we kind of live it and breathe it. Of those online, there is a potential indication that there are some old fuel tanks under the surface from previous use of the site, perhaps back in the county council days or whatever. That's yet to be determined. But if there are old fuel tanks on site, then there is a potential that there is some contamination, and that is potentially what may be found, but we won't find that without doing the testing. So just to get some clarity around that, particularly for those online. Your worship.
Yes, thank you. If I look on for those online, if I'm looking on page 19, 5.3, staff identified a combination of scenarios 1A and 3 to be ideal. And if you go to the appendix, pages 28, 1A, and I think it's 30 or 3, they are very slightly different. Is there an explanation as to how a combination of those two would be?
So so the 1A was the preferred option in terms of the EOC location. So 1A, the EOC location is from 1A and the rest of the building is from 3A. So basically it's just the point where the governance and the community hub are aligned in one line and there's a clear demarcation for the office. So that's what we are picking from 3A. And I think after I've put together this report, we've managed to do another report compiling this, and we have a final report which I'll bring it to council next week.
So that final report will indicate the location of those two aspects.
That's right. It will merge 1A and 3 into one final.
Thank you. I just wanted clarification in terms of this report.
Yeah, thank you for seeking that clarity, because I think what it does, if we're looking through today's order paper, just also again shows the level of work that is going on in the background, the various different scenarios that we're trying to consider. And all those scenarios at the forefront of our mind is what is the costing impact of this? How do we sit within our budgets? But at the same time, how does it all flow and all work? So these are all conversations that have been had across the board, again, in numerous meetings that Mayor Andy, myself, Ishwar, Carol and Anna has had as a subcommittee, along with Richard Lambert, Councillor Lambert, that have been held over the last few months. So I think it does capsulate it quite well. So thank you for that. Anything further on this matter, Ishwar, from you, or questions from the floor, specifically relating to this project? Being none, can you step us through the next couple on the agenda, please?
Taihape Grandstand, we've had two meetings with the community where we've kind of presented the council's stand on what is the remaining budget and what that budget will be allocated for. We've explicitly said that the remaining budget will only be put forward towards the seismic strengthening works. And in that process, the lower level may not be accessible for public use once that work is done. But the community seems to be intent on using the lower levels. So we've had this discussion where we've passed it back to the community, say any funding beyond that available balance funding will be funded by the community. So there's a few scenarios where if we do this work, then the lower levels will not be used. So the community was supposed to go back and look at their funding opportunities and then meet us on the 7th of May, which was unfortunately cancelled in the last minute. So we're just waiting for another meeting to be scheduled with them to understand how this goes forward.
Thank you, Ishwar. That's my understanding of where we sit with this project, but I would like to note the decision to do a number of the things that you've just said. They were active council decisions, not staff decisions alone. They were active council decisions that were brought to the council committee and voted on. So just to be clear that those are decisions that were made by council as a whole. Councillor Wong.
Do we have a date for a new meeting at all?
No, not yet.
Councillor Duncan was going to take a bit of a lead on that one.
Okay, stepping through to Taihape Town Hall Library redevelopment.
Taihape Town Hall, so council has, the staff had presented two options where one of the option was to seismic strengthen the whole building and the other option was to seismic strengthen the first front two-story structure, but demolish the hall and the stage areas and build a new one. Council approved to proceed with the one with the demolition option. So Maycroft are currently working on putting together a design for that one and checking the costs. I've just received something yesterday. So we'll just review it and probably put together something for council next week.
Just on that subject and perhaps a little bit further to Councillor Maughan's question, and I appreciate the answers that we got from staff. Any concerns sitting there with how this project is looking? It's proceeding along what you would expect with regards to the timelines as indicated at earlier council decision points?
No change so far.
Okay, thank you. Questions regarding Taihape and processes where we're at there? Not seeing any from the floor. 8.1, Martin swim setter structure remediation.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is the one that we discussed in a lot of detail at the last council meeting. Since then, myself and the architects, so Create Architects and Engineers, we are in the last stages of finalizing the scope, after which I'm thinking early next week, design on that scope can start. So I've had a look at those timelines and we are within the timelines that we proposed. I also potentially would bring something to council for the council meeting next week, just to get a final view on your decision as to how we move forward with that scope. I think that would be applicable to this one. And then we'll go from there once we've got the scope nailed down.
Obviously, thank you for that. Obviously, a project of high significance and interest to the community. There is no doubt from a council point of view, we are very, very keen to get this one moving as quickly as possible. However, we do need to make sure that it's done appropriately and correctly, that we don't trip ourselves up. I would encourage as much comms and information out to the community as quickly as possible through this to keep everybody engaged. It is actually an exciting opportunity, I believe, for the community, and I really do think that our approach to staging this and our approach to saying in future we can enhance it further than what we've agreed to do is really, really good. And I think it's a positive space to be in. So I would encourage as much comms and communication out with regards to this, please, if we could. Any questions relating to that particular item? Again, not seeing any from around the floor. Councillors, good. 9.1 under a miscellaneous category, Scott's Ferry.
Miscellaneous Scott's Ferry, there is no new update on that item for this meeting. I think I just need to mention that we've asked Kevin Ross to help out in this space. I know Kevin has been in contact with the community down there quite a lot since the last meeting. And I would expect with Kevin having a look at this, things will move along a lot quicker.
Certainly from an assets point of view, I'd be liking to see this get tidied up. It's been bouncing around this council table for far too long and for far too many years. I know I know you're working on it. I appreciate that, but we really do need to get this matter addressed so everybody down in that community, which is feeling vulnerable, can understand what's happening and who's doing what. I think it's pretty critical, and I hope that bit of work that Kevin Ross is doing will help with that. Councillor Carter.
This tractor being used for flooding emergencies, will it be available for any other emergencies
This is,
such as schemes?
through you, Mr. Chair, this is where things get very tricky from a legal perspective as to who can use it, what can it be used for, who's liable for what. This is where it becomes very tricky. So there's been requests to use that tractor for all kinds of things, and it's the more requests, the more complex it becomes.
I would agree with that assessment that there is potentially some huge risks sitting to council.
Yeah.
As a what would ultimately be a council owned asset. So let's hope that the memorandum of understanding that is being worked on can clarify some of those issues so that everybody again is aware of where everyone sits and stands in that space. So looking forward to getting some resolution. Councillor Charlotte.
Just following up on councillor Carter's thing, if everybody's going to use the tractor down there, it brings in a whole lot of health and safety issues in too, so it's a
That's exactly it.
minefield.
I think Kevin and staff are very much aware of that, at the same time as trying to address the issue. As we step through, more things present themselves and create more questions, which delays the process and takes a longer time to try and get some sort of resolution. So there's a huge amount of work being done, but I appreciate, particularly for our two bulls, councillors, that it's right in your patch, and you probably hear it foremost at your neck of the woods. But it is not lost on myself as chair of the assets, but also our staff to try and get some sort of resolution around this matter, which I said has been bouncing around for some time. So moving on to item 10, newly introduced to us, but not unknown to many. Studdings Lake Community Building. Step us through that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we thought we would put this in under miscellaneous to get some guidance, and then obviously we'll pass the decision on to council next week. What this is really about is the community building at the Duddings Lake complex has been sponsored to council, and what the managing company want to do is to formalize that and vest it to us, so the building becomes ours as part of our building stock. So it's really just to neaten it up.
Questions on that one? I think there'll be a few. Your worship, start with you.
Yeah, just a little warning to staff. I sympathise with the position, the way the paper is written. It has effectively moved into a deliberative position. So when staff argue that something is the least desired, or it's fine for them to highlight the difficulties with and highlight concerns, but when you start suggesting a vote position as a process, governance process, I'm wary of that.
I take it on board. I see where your
I can
concerns sit with that.
sympathise with staff. It highlights the issue, but it moves into what can be a very tricky area.
That's a procedural matter that you're raising there.
Right.
Any thoughts or comments on what the mayor has just indicated?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I I created the report and I thank the mayor for his view and will pay special attention to that going forwards.
Now that you've raised that, your worship, would you see that wouldn't say in some way impact the decision that sits before us today, or are you just highlighting that as a?
I'm just highlighting it as a process that the decision effectively sits with the governors, and there is a fine line here.
But you don't see it as an issue for us to carry on with this item
I
on the
don't think
agenda?
it prejudices the position.
Thank you for that. Councillor Moore?
My question is around the quality of the building, whether it has been built to consent, fully consented. Because, last thing I'd want is the council to take on a building that all of a sudden we have to do remedial work, asbestos or something, like all that sort of stuff. I just want to, if I was going to support recommendation 3, I think it is, it would be around whether that building is fit for purpose. We don't want to inherit a dog.
No.
Is what I'm getting at. So what's the security around that?
Yeah, and fair point.
Thank you.
Comment?
Chair, yeah, the building is really in a good condition. It's well used. It gets a lot of use. And potentially it's in a better condition than most of our other old halls and other stock that we own. So for us, from an asset management perspective, it doesn't stand out in any way.
Yep, some good question.
Brian, all makes all those
Timber
standards.
frame buildings. Yeah.
Councillor Wong?
With the change of ownership, would the community have an expectation that it will be maintained by the council without the need for the service clubs and the volunteers to carry on what they were doing in the last few years? Is that a risk that we face, or has that been indicated that they were happy to carry on maintaining?
Perhaps I could clarify that as I have been involved as some of the service clubs on this project when it was first moved on site by a group of Martin businessmen that bought it from the Rongotia Women's Bowling Club, got it carried over onto site. It's my understanding that was done, it was a consented project via council and put on site in what would meet normal terms and conditions. The service club work that has gone on since then has been the building of the deck area that relates to it. Since that deck was constructed and built, the building itself hasn't had a great deal of other support from the service clubs, although it is an overall project is something that Martin Lyons have been quite heavily involved in. And Martin Lyons, way back in the day, were heavily involved in the construction of the toilet block out there, and barbecue areas have also been installed out there. So there is still a service club component to it, but the building itself doesn't have an ongoing service club maintenance program, so to speak. However, in the past, the service clubs locally around the town have come together for joint venture projects of this sort of nature. The deck building was one of them. Just also it is a highly used premises and building, and my assessment of it is that it is actually in pretty good shape. Just to clarify the service club component. Further questions, Councillor Loudon?
Just regarding the lease on the contract.
Can I ask Graham Point further on that question?
Sorry, I didn't catch
Oh,
that.
the lease by the contractor on the Duddings Lake facility, is that presently on hold, like on a month-to-month basis, because it's finished?
Can I,
2023?
Bedandik is my middle name. Can I please note that it is a management agreement?
Yeah.
It is not a lease. There are no standard lease clauses. I think that's imperative that the members understand that. Yes, it is currently running on overdue, and that is just on a monthly basis at present. And I think possibly pending determination on what the future of the building will be before we progress the renewal or otherwise of their management agreement.
So the two things are linked to the decision around the building and the decision around the management contract.
I don't think they need to be from an extension of the management agreement perspective, but I haven't discussed that with the directors of the managing company. I have had some discussion with their lawyer, quite some discussion with their lawyer on it. It hasn't arisen as a question.
Thank you. The land, if I may ask, the land at Dunnings Lake, particularly where the building sits on, who actually owns the land? Is it reserved? Or is it actually council vested in council ownership?
RDC owns it. Again, the pedant in me suggests that it should be deemed reserve for all purposes in terms of the act. It would be reserve,
Thank you.
but that does not necessarily create any further discussion or thought.
Thank you. So it's currently sits as a
It's an RDC asset.
An RDC asset to all intents and purposes. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Further questions, Your Worship?
Yeah, I accept that this is not a lease, that it is a management agreement. But it has some of the timeframes that leases have. And so this is 2023 and expiry. So how can we be sure that leases that we have in process, including grazing leases, haven't expired and are just being.
I hear what you're saying, but to me, I think that was something that we would need to take up as an action. Because that's something, we have a lot of leases. And I think what I've heard from Mr. Point and the staff is that's the management isn't actually linked necessarily, the management agreement isn't linked necessarily to the decision that sits in front of us, but that's a broader question that we should.
Yeah, can I answer that one? I think what His Worship's talking about is if this lease has lapsed, how do we make sure that other leases haven't lapsed and that we understand when their expiry date's coming up? This is something that we had identified as an issue and it's been handled by IS to put in a system and a process around leases. I'm not sure if Leanne wants to.
With IS, through the chair, IS has put in a system so that people can manage their leases, but the actual management of the leases would still fall under the individual activities. But they can at least see when leases now are expiring and it's quite visible to the managers, but it's still reliant on the managers to do that work.
And through you, Mr. Chair, I anticipated that answer because it is an issue that I've raised before, but it is absolutely the need for an automatic process of signalling that when these sorts of agreements, not only leases, but contractual agreements or consenting timeframes need to be in a database that are automatically picked up.
And Galen has just said that that is exactly what is happening with the leases. Yeah.
Okay, so is there an action that needs to be done this or are we hearing that it's
I
already
think
in place?
It's already in place because it
Yeah.
was identified and that has been put in place thanks to IS.
I do appreciate Your Worship. That's a question that you've raised before. So I understand that. Councillor Moore.
I don't know if this is a valid question or not, or I should ask it or not, but I will. The management contractor owns the building. According to 10.11, the management contractor obtained and brought the building on site at no cost to the council. So who owns the building at the moment?
Okay.
The management.
Yeah, so the management contractor or the people that own the building are a group of local Martin businessmen.
Yes.
They bought the building, they put it in site and they invested it into that site for the benefit of the management contract is with the person that actually manages the operation of the Dunnings Lake complex. That's my understanding. So they're two slightly different things when we're talking about the management contract. Am I correct in saying that? Or am I right off?
No, it is to Dunning Lake Limited by company.
Yes.
It's not for. I don't know the intimate detail of how the management company runs it.
Somebody's got to own the building. It's not us because they're going to give it to us.
Just been indicated that 10.11, management contract to obtain and bought the building on the site at no cost to County to provide an extra facility for the lake. So therefore they own the building, yes. And they're now seeking to vest that building into the council assets.
I've got a, no, I won't.
Seeking
No, that's clarified enough for me,
they're
but I
seeking to
just,
give that asset that they bought and put on site, and they're seeking it to give it to council.
or next question is the management contractors who's running the site at the moment wanting to renew their contract?
We haven't explored that to any great extent. Yes, the understanding is yes, that is what's intended.
Yeah, that'll do for the time being.
Okay, councillor Loudon, question from you?
Being very new to this, and thank you, Hannah, for the report. Are there three entities here? There's the council, and then there's the company that bought, or the group of local businessmen that bought the building onto the site. And then there's a management contract. Is the management contract with Rangitikei District Council? Is it with the group of businessmen that put the building on the site?
I probably need to declare.
This is
that.
something that, Carol, if you, yes, you probably do.
Yeah.
Yes, Carol has just brought to my attention, she potentially has a conflict of interest in this with one of the business people involved. So I think from that, I will take that from the chair and suggest that that is valid, and will not seek any further comment from the councillor regards to this matter. But with regards to your direct question, I'd look towards Graham Poynton to further this question, that question.
We go back to context. The initial arrangement arose out of what had been a lease. The lessor did not perform or could not perform and backed out of the arrangement following a number of public meetings. The people who are shareholders, directors of the now management company, I think we're all Lions. Certainly the impetus all came from the Lions Club. The Lions Club was, as Mr. Chair has noted, very involved in development of the lake from the outset as a public facility. The Lions were very keen to see the activity continue out at the lake. And as I say, I think it was 5 maybe of them put together a company to either lease or manage or whatever. After negotiation with council, the arrangement of a management company was decided on, and that had and still has significant benefits to our ratepayers in that our parks team people do not now manage or care for, tend the lake, the whole of the enterprise. That's all part of the management agreement. So maintenance of buildings, like minor maintenance, etc. Capital replacement is not, but normal wear and tear, running maintenance, etc., is all part of the management agreement. The entity involved is a company. And that's it. So we have 2 entities. One is the landowner, RDC. The other is the management company.
Just I'll go to you, Your Worship, but my understanding of it is that's 100% correct in how this whole arrangement came together. Yeah, through Lions as a service club.
Look, in fairness to councillors, yes, I am aware through history and I'm aware of the advantages to council, but council has put a considerable amount of money into Dunnings Lake, both in terms of electrical upgrades and roading in particular. But in fairness to councillors, I would suggest that there needs to be a paper that comes to council illustrating who the parties are and where the income comes to the lake and who receives that income and what the agreement should be. Or what the agreement currently is, because there is a lack of understanding both within the report and councillors' local knowledge.
Would you see that as a request for that information to come prior to the recommendations that sit in front of us?
I think it becomes part and parcel of the future recommendations around the future of the lake. There needs to be a very clear understanding of responsibilities there.
Yeah, just to be, are you suggesting that the recommendation two that we have in front of us would not be able to be considered by this council prior to seeing the report and information you've just, or are you suggesting that we could still deal with recommendation two and request that the full update to councillors regarding the management of Duddings Lake be brought to a council meeting at a later stage?
Look, I think this has sat there since 2023. That my preference would be that this report decision be tabled until such time as the information is in front of you.
Looking around the room, what is the feeling of other councillors around that before I would rule from the chair on that one? Councillor Moore.
Yeah, I would like more information. I've got a bit of a seed in the back of my mind that I need further information on. You know, I don't want to look at give horse in the mouth, but just worried about some catches.
Councillor Loudon, from you?
I certainly agree with Mayor Watson. I'd like to know the background to this and the relationships between each of the parties, because there seems to be three parties and I just don't quite understand.
Right, on the basis of that, that gives me significant direction from chair that we'll just leave this matter lie on the table till some more further information comes to us. Is the committee happy with that?
Yes, I'd just like it known that in raising this, there's no criticism at all of any of the parties.
No, absolutely not. I agree.
They have all acted in good faith.
Yes.
And it is a valuable community asset.
100% agree.
But there needs to be very clear understanding of responsibilities.
100% agree with you, your worship. The parties are all known to me, as I know they are known to you. But I think the fact that there is some lack of understanding around this community asset and to how it's structured does mean it's valid enough for councillors to understand a little bit more about how it came to be. And I think that is that's very valid. So on the grounds of that, I'll move from the chair of this matter remain on the table to a subsequent, perhaps subsequent workshop meeting to be followed up by a decision via the next council meeting could be the way to facilitate this. We have a assets workshop coming up where we could raise this matter, I believe, so that it doesn't stagnate and can take it then forward as a decision to full council.
Yep.
Would that be appropriate?
Yes, there will be.
Okay, all those in favour of that?
Do you have a second?
That's worship mayor was certainly seconding, I believe. All those in favour? Okay, so the motion is carried. Thank you for that, gentlemen. Thank you for the good discussion around that.
Can we get some words for
we
Kezia?
just have a pause.
Mr. Chair, if I can just quickly say, I keep seeing and thinking I should say that welcome back to Kezia. I'm so glad she's back in the room. I'm like, yeah.
We'll just take a couple of moments to get some wording around this decision as it's not one that's on the order paper. We'll just mute quickly while we have the discussions around getting the wording and then I'll bring it back live. we just have you back at the table, please? We do need to push on. We do have a recommendation, which has been moved by myself, seconded by councillor, by his worship mayor.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first recommendation we have in front of us is that the report, Martin Projects updates be received. I'll move from the chair. Seconded councillor Morn, thank you. Second recommendation, all those in favour? Against, motion is carried. Thank you. Second recommendation, which refers to our earlier conversation, that the matter of the gifting and vesting of the community building at Dudding Lake be left to lie on the table until a further report is provided to council. Move myself as chair, second as wish, mayor. All those in favour? Against? Again, thank you. That motion is carried, and thank you for your discussions on that matter. It's good to see and hear the views around the table. We now move to item 10 on this report, which is a roading update. Welcome, Mr. Darren Black, our roading assets manager in that space. Take us through your report. Thank you.
We'll start with second item there is low cost, low risk funding. We had a second opportunity to apply to the government for project related budget. Low cost, low risk is a renewal, well, it's not a renewal, it's a sort of a new project or improvement project type activity with a ceiling of $2 million per project. So anything over that, we have to go through a business case. So this fits under that. With the GPS, the government position statement on land transport changing, the submission we made for our 3-year block funding didn't align as well as the new government wanted. So the whole lot was declined. We've sort of been through that in the past, but it's given us the opportunity to keep those funds aside, if you like, for these things that they keep dropping on us. So this targeted fund is the second lot with alignment with strategic priorities for growth and whole life costs and a few other things. So we submitted all those projects in the table there. Unfortunately, only 3 were approved. You see, there's a fair amount from Taihape Napier route. We discussed the targeted fund with our investment advisor before we went into it, and talked about the damage that we had on the Taihape Napier route following the mill closures. And he, at that time, was supportive. So we went through the motions. We also engaged with Hastings District Council and WSP and regenerated some work they did in 2020 on that corridor management plan and submitted all those projects. Unfortunately, they didn't get approved. So we've had to have a rethink about how we'll attack those under our existing budgets, which is going to be a bit of a problem, but that's the only way we can go forward with those. So yeah, we'll see the round approval for 790 out of that 6.9 million. The projects that we have got, Wairuhi Road, there's a large slip there that's mobile. It's moving across the carriageway. We're down to 1 lane at the moment. So we've got plans in place over the next 2 years to get that cracking. There are some issues with a dump site there, so we don't want to contribute to the road damage by our construction. The other one, Muramutu Road, is a state highway type bypass with a couple of areas that need rock repairs around River Creek erosion. And Mokai Road, we've completed that one, was a retreat. So that's all done. Any questions on any of that? We'll move on to the next one.
I've got a couple, but we'll move to Special Mayor.
2 or 3 from me. First of all, in terms of the first road, Wairuhi Road, that's the road out to Rangiwai, isn't it?
Yep.
And that's the huge section that comes down the side of the hill. We have cut the toe off that slip before. Do you think that that's going to stabilise it?
We had a
Drainage?
we had a WSP engineer with us on a visit about 3 or 4 months ago, and he suggested that we carry on with that. I think now that we've got an approved activity on that job, if it does develop, we have got the initial approval to say that, hey, there's a problem here.
The second road is the road out past Fee and Richards, isn't it?
Yeah.
The third the third road from Mokai, is that the section that we had sealed around the bluff, or is it?
That's past that, it's on the unsealed section. It's quite narrow. You go across the
Yeah.
bridge and before you wind down that gut.
That's not all the sealed section, okay. Get all that. The not approved one, Kaimata Iwi Road. We've been out there 2 or 3 times. Has it started moving already this winter?
Not yet, not that I'm aware of.
But it's going to, isn't it?
Yeah, that comes up in the next, in the report. Yeah, I've got a bit more information around that. So we need to think about how we're going to attack that.
There is further in the report. It is a pity with the Gentle Annie ones, because we were encouraged by NZTA to put applications in for this, almost in partnership once we removed the trucking off the road to rail. And I think that is something that I go back and have a discussion with Regional Director, Mr. Chair, because there was a deal struck here. And NZTA were in the room and they said, we're encouraging you to have a conversation with us. So I doubt whether we'll win, but I will take up that at a higher level.
Which does lead me to, thank you, Wish, it lead me to my question. If we put the applications in, based on the fact that there was a need and then someone's been to the site and understood what the issue is. So that's why we put the application in. The fact that they've come back and said not approved doesn't diminish the fact that there was a need in the first place. But does not approved mean not in this round, or does no mean no? Or do we just keep going back and rattling the change? That's what I'm trying to understand.
So first and second, third, that means not in this round, and yes, we keep it in chain.
Thank you. Do any of these ones that they've said no to carry what would you could call undue or significant safety risk here? Or are they all in that? But I'm just trying to think if there's something there that's really jumping out at you and going, they've said no to this one, perhaps they don't understand and perhaps we have a risk. We should know. And is that the case?
Yeah, there's one there, the traction seal on Gentle Annie. That's fallen to bits. So we've done a repair up there, which wasn't successful. We're looking at a deep lift option, which is an asphalt type product.
Okay, so how do we go back to them and say, hey, you may have misread the room on this one? And how, or do we have to, I don't, when is the next round, I guess?
3 years.
3 years, right?
Next, sorry, we're year 1 of 3. So
We
20
could be
27 to
potentially
30.
carrying a significant risk on some of these sites for a long period of time. Well, that's concerning.
They've made a suggestion to us that we engage with Hastings and go back to them with a plan for the route. But it's kind of that, hey, bring me a people from the beach, and I don't like that one, get me another one. It's changing all the time.
Okay, you wish you've got comment. I know that you work in this
Yeah,
space quite actively.
Spec is absolutely right. So we're also encouraged to relook at this as a specified route and we'll make a couple of places around be the lead on that project. But also, unfortunately, I suspect that these all lie beyond where the wind farm will go in. They do, don't they?
Only the first section that we went for on Te Moihau.
Yeah, so otherwise we'd have had another avenue there. But I can take this to a regional roading level in terms of, in the old days, there was a regional roading fund that we could bid for above and beyond TA facility. And I'll bring it up there as well, but I'll talk to, this is a conversation that I think goes to ministerial level, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Certainly acknowledge that you are very active in that roading space with NZTA and that you voice our concerns quite strongly with them. But I have no doubt that before you would be going to speak with anybody higher up the chain, you'd be liaising with staff, particularly Darren, to get a greater understanding of where that's all at and what information he can provide to you to help facilitate a better outcome, because there's a number of concerns sitting around this, which I think we should be aware of.
I would see the meeting with Hastings being at a combination of governance and operational level.
Thank you for that. I don't think there's anything more that we can add to that. Say disappointing to see so many not approved, but it is a sign of times that we're living in with budget constraints across the board, and that's unfortunately what a lot of these things come down to, is there's just not enough money.
It's just through you, Mr. Chair, there's just a final financial implication, because then putting this list forward, that would have been a part of our budget presentation with regard to our share. Where does that mean that we will be left with unspent money within our existing budget?
So it goes back to our initial low cost, low risk application with the 24 to 27 tranche that was completely rejected. That was 12 million over 3 years. So that facility is still available as far as I understand. So we have, yeah.
But it has an implication here, surely, that the money still sits there, but we lose the FAR rating for it. And this is a dangerous place for us to be playing in. We need to fully understand it.
Okay, Mr. Chair, make a comment on that. Last year, I don't know if the committee can remember, we actually brought a report to you saying that this was the reduction in funding. This is the local share that's available, and that we will, for the rest of the 3-year block, will produce a priority list that councillors can choose if they want to use the local share or not, and what do they want to use it on. So there was quite a bit of information presented already.
Yes, I recall that report, but I remember seeing it up on the screen, but I don't know where it's sort of gone to from there. But I acknowledge that that was brought to us, yes, at exactly the same time when we were turned down on the original 12 million.
Yeah.
Okay, some disappointment in the room around that one, but again, appreciate the work you're doing in a what is a difficult space to be in. So looking at 2.4, that's one that has been of significant concern to a resident in that area, and I know Worship the Mayor has been working quite a bit in that space. An update on that, please, Darren.
So that was included in that funding request. May have been a long shot, but it was around productivity and the benefits of being able to get to the end of your road. So they declined it. Just a bit of background there. I think everyone's probably aware, but there was a forestry operation there above the road. Historically, there was a dam above the road as well. That part of the site became unstable after the forestry left. There was a bit of slash and low points, held water, basically let go. So took a section of the road out and severed access to about 2 kilometres past that, which is access to farm infrastructure, large farm there, and also a small holding at the end of the road. So we've had WSP out there a couple of times initially, and in December last year, just to go over, what the last one was around what our options are. So we've got a couple of options there to remediate. The chosen option really is to reprofile the land, put a big rock drain down through the gut, and then culvert under the road, and some herringbone type structure drains that'll feed into it. That's our preferred option. So this space really is to your attention. That's where we'd like to head. There was talk that's been to the council meeting a couple of times, so really some direction there, or maybe a bit of discussion on what your thoughts are about. That's I guess
I think on that one, we do have a recommendation at the end of this report regards that. I note that you've still got another couple of matters to step through. Could I suggest that we save any questions on this particular item until we get to the recommendation at the end, to enable us to step through the other matters on this report? Your Worship, looking at your...
There are just a couple of very high level questions I think would be worth asking at this stage.
Okay.
But your
if it's particularly relevant, but carry on.
So this report is written independently to any investigation in terms of horizons around the state that the site was left in terms of forestry disposal. That was an area up for discussion in itself. Has there been any further discussion around that?
We were in discussion with them earlier on, Philip was speaking to them, but that lost traction.
So no party is accepting any liability. So your advice to us is that we do not pursue that?
I didn't think the appetite was there when talking to Philip, when he was engaged with them. So I don't know whether they wanted to take it any further.
And the second part of this is, this has been turned down for low cost, low risk, but the maintenance aspects will still be met under FAR rate.
Yeah. So I spoke to our investment advisor about our options, and I wanted to try and maybe resurrect some emergency works funding, but that won't sell. So really our only option now is under our existing budgets. Maintenance budgets.
Yeah, but it is still FAR rate funded.
Yeah, and your worship, given the fact that there's a recommendation at the end, the issue that you first raised in the first question may still be able to be facilitated down the line, even subject to a decision being made. We could still, again, using my words, rattle that chain if we felt that way inclined, and it wouldn't impede us from doing that if we were to make this decision. I don't think of the later recommendation. But let's park that one to have that discussion when we get to the recommendation. I'll work with your further thoughts while you think about that. I may be wrong in my assessment of that, but let's move on to that. 2.5 school signage funding.
This is another low cost, low risk activity. In the last 3-year block, funding was made available to upgrade signage around schools. So we had reduced speed limits around school opening and closing times. They didn't make that funding available initially for the 24-27 block. I think they realised that actually we need to do this, so now they've made it open again. So we've applied for the remaining schools. We did 10 under the last tranche of funding, and we've got another 11 to do, just listed there, and we're still waiting for that decision. Because the speed limit rule change in 2024 mandated that these school signage needs to be updated by 2026. I don't see there's an issue with them approving it, and I don't see them going into line by line analysis of our application. So I'm pretty confident we'll get this funding.
Thank you for that. I've got a couple of questions, and I must say, particularly on behalf of Councillor Duncan, who's unable to be here, it's a space that she's been working in quite heavily, particularly in Tauroa School, which is in Taihape, or the north of Taihape. Given the fact that the status of this report says that these items are all pending, and our previous discussions came back with approved and not approved, I've just heard you say you don't think that I'll be going through it line by line. I accept that. However, if there was some, particularly the electronic VSS signage, if they were to say yes to some and not to others, and I'm referring to the Tauroa School one in particular, do we have the opportunity to say, well, you've said yes to that one, but we think this one's more important? Because my understanding of the various different reports, and particularly from Councillor Duncan, is that the Tauroa School one represents quite some concern in that area by the topography of the land, the road access. It's a bendy, bit of a blind corner. Have we got any scope, I guess, to move the money around within that?
Well, they're reasonably specific pricing. So I've looked at each school. Most of them are static, which is just signs without the electronic input. Tauroa School's a bit different because they use all their bus stops about 100 metres away from the school. They're walking up the road, so it's different to other schools where they might have off-road parking for buses and cars. So I really would defend that. I'd argue against it, but these decisions are made in Wellington. By the time they get back to us, there's probably not the opportunity to challenge it. So the only way we could maybe squeeze that in as electronic if they brought it back to VSS would be to reject the program.
Yeah. I'll park that, but was just again looking to follow up with Councillor Duncan's concerns on that one. But thank you for that answer. Items relating to that, anything further as we step into Bruce Street in Huntable? Number 3, good report there, and thank you for bringing it to us. I note that we have had some correspondence direct to us as councillors around some of the concerns being raised up there. There was a concern raised with you, Councillor Morn. Have you got comment on this item?
Yeah, good email that came out the other day, which I forwarded on to some people up in the community. The next question they keep asking is, how much is this costing?
So that it's not costing anything for the remedial work.
No.
If it didn't go, if it went to plan, well, it's not going to cost us anymore. So 116,000 was the repairs that we've made. So there are a number of dig outs to repair the pavement, which was deformed, and then the surface. So our plan is to get the strength back in the pavement and then do a reseal next year, chip seal reseal, which is not a popular decision when you've had AC through a town centre. But with the traffic and the activity through there, we want to be sure that the pavement is handling it before would go back to AC asphalt. That's the smooth stuff.
The remedial works covered by the contractor.
Just to give you an example of the cost of putting it back as asphalt, a asphalt reseal through that site from Parakaratu Street to the highway is about $520,000 by 40 against a chip seal reseal at 60,000. So that's the decision we've made there.
Is that far funded? Is that, do we get a far?
It is, yeah.
So that's the council share, the 116?
No, that's total cost.
Thank you for that on that item, because that was a bit of a hot topic one for those in Huntable, and some of our Huntable community people were rightly contacting the councillors about it. But thank you very much for your speedy response in getting that information out there to say that clearly there was an issue, you were aware of the issue, and that you and your team were addressing it as best. I think that's really quite critical in a number of things that we do around, particularly around assets. If there's something's not right, let's get in there and get the comms out as soon as we possibly can. So thank you for your actions on that. I think it's been well received. I know certainly by the councillors, those living in Huntable, but also the council community committee are appreciative of the contact. So thank you for that.
It's actually still not over.
I know that.
They planned to seal yesterday and they had a breakdown of that before. And now they can't get the machinery running. So it's the weekend, and the weekend's not a good time for shop owners.
Yeah, thank you. Shared pathway, Kalakalan, I think we addressed that earlier. Emergency works, item number 5.
Yeah, this is a job on the boundary bridge with Hastings. They had their hands full and still have, I guess, with Gabrielle response work. We were made aware of the work that they were needing to do on the Kurupanga Bridge in time for us to lodge a funding request with NZTA. So we kind of missed the boat there, but NZTA have let us put in a late application. So we applied to that, and that's what this item's about. Just getting a local share in place so we can pay our portion.
And noting there is a recommendation directly associated with this one as well. Any further questions of this before we step to the recommendations? Looking around the room. Not seeing any hands up. I'll move. Oh, sorry, Councillor Carter.
I brought to Darren's attention a concern regarding a fire hydrant in Hawkeston Road. Having had a side rail built over it, so as the fire hydrant cannot be used. Is it worthwhile putting that in the follow-up actions?
Yeah, but it's underway, but I can give you.
Yeah, I think if we list it as a follow-up action, then it's a reminder just to make sure it doesn't get lost. And that's the purpose of our follow-up actions, was for exactly those sorts of things. Let's log it in. The discussion's been had. We can come back to it and go, hey, what did that? And I'm sure, as we've just heard from Darren, it's underway. I'm sure that we put that down as an action, it'll come back to us at our next meeting, and we'll see a big completed beside that. So hopefully we can just log that in. Moving from the chair, receipt of the report, recommendation 1. I'll move from the chair, be received. Look, receipt, Councillor Charlton, thank you. All those in favour? Against? None. Moving on to recommendation 2.
Now, Mr. Chair, could I just, we've had a request from Ms McDonald to make sure in this resolution, we include where the funding would come from. So with your permission, I'd like to
Let's
just take a
add that
quick
in. No,
pause
it's
and
good.
add that in.
And thank you. So those that are online looking at the order papers which have been circulated, the additional wording is that the slip on Kamatea Road to be funded from the general purpose capital works reserve. So a question from Darren with regard to this.
It wasn't the flood damage reserve.
No, that's for your seven, that's for the other one. You had two.
Yeah.
The other one's not got that level of funding in it, if you recall. So we've got our two reserves that we've talked about today. The flood damage one is 309,000, that's all it's got. And this reserve has got 2.4 million.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for seeking that clarification, Darren. That's good. Is everybody happy with the additional wording that has been presented into the recommendation? Councillor Wong.
Could the funding not be or directed at that funding of the unspent money from the lack of approval for the that I know.
Unsubsidised?
Mm.
The unsubsidised funding, I'll hand that back to Mr. Black. I can't answer that.
We've got an avenue to fund it through our maintenance operations program.
Mm.
Can't increase that program. So, no. Yeah.
Okay, so better know from that. We've got a couple of questions regarding, but should we not be actually getting this recommendation on the table before we discuss all of these as general questions around the subject?
Oh, can I just say we were stopped from asking questions earlier in the report.
Yeah.
To leave it till here, so.
So that's why I'd like to get the recommendation on the table. Is anybody seeking to move the recommendation as it is worded?
No.
Well, I'd like to move the recommendation so that we can then take questions 2 and be speaking to the recommendations.
Was that approves?
That council approves, yep. Recommendation 2. And then I'd like to speak to the recommendation, because I believe all the questions are going to come out of the recommendation. I'm seeking a seconder for that. Councillor Wong seeking a second. Thank you. All those in favour?
I have a question.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, no, okay, now, sorry, well, I was about to go and try and move that. That would have been premature of me. Slow down, Dave. Okay, now that we have a recommendation, I will seek those speaking to or asking questions of, your worship.
So of this $350,000, is that the total cost? Is that our share of?
It's the total. So $250,000 split with a 40% contingency.
So should the recommendation illustrate that?
The local share.
Yeah. I think it's wise to, because it will be read that that is what the ratepayer is paying for this.
So what's now?
So that's our share is 34%.
So is that far rated?
Yeah.
For that little bit of road?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, all our roads attract the far rate. It's just our local share that we've applied for some additional funding to, which we were unsuccessful with.
119,000.
Okay. Okay,
Is our share.
that's our share.
So through you, Chair, do you want to do that as an amendment? You've got a mover and a seconder.
Funded from the general purpose reserve. Yeah, we'll do that as an amendment, yep.
So will you change that 350?
Yeah.
Can we just call that our local share instead of going down to the cents, the dollars and the cents? I'm just thinking if it's slightly different for whatever reason, we'd have to come back and rectify. If you go down to that kind of detail, I'm just suggesting maybe what we should say is that our local share of that repair will be funded from wherever we choose to fund it from, rather than go down to cents.
Yeah, because you've indicated you've got a 40% contingency sitting in there somewhere, so that could change the numbers if you put a number of them.
And if you go down to that detail, you'll be back to get another resolution.
How's it different from 350?
What I would suggest is don't mention, so the 350 is what we think the overall charge will be. And our local share of that will be covered by this.
I think so.
Okay,
Could I
just,
provide some suggested words to you, for your amendment would be directly at the end stating, noting that council's local share is 34% of this
yeah,
cost.
good, yeah. Yeah, general capital works, like the council's local share is 34%. Yeah. Okay. So that is becomes the amended motion. Is there any further discussion on that before I seek to amend
Want to ask some, couple more questions?
around this amendment or around the overall project? Okay, so I will, therefore,
Move for an amendment, move for a second for that amendment.
yeah, that's what I'm looking for now.
On
Do
the
we have a move?
application, at the end, you've got 34% of the total cost. You haven't got total cost at the start. Repair at a cost of, it should be total cost.
I don't know that you can actually say that because it's an estimated repair. So I think that's 34% of the total cost on completion of the job is accurate. The 350,000 is an estimated cost with a 40% contingency in it. So I don't think we can say that the total cost would be 350,000 would be I think the 34% of the total cost, whatever that total cost end up being, is still going to be where our local share is, because that's under our FAR rate.
Still incorrect.
Thank you. So we now seek to have a mover and seconder for the amended. Your worship, the mayor moving,
I move.
seconding councillor Carter. All those in favour of the amended motion? Against, that motion is carried. Amended motion now becomes the substantive motion. We will now go back to questions relating to it. Councillor Moore.
How many people live past the slip?
There's two properties serviced from Russell Slip, one resident. It's a large farm, they have all that infrastructure past there. And then a small building at the end.
Second question. Option 4 was stop the road before the slip. Would that absolve us from having to do anything with that?
We need to investigate it to see how that works, but yeah, that's the general outcome.
As we sit right now, we have a failure on a road that belongs to and is administered by the Rakatika District Council. So that's the situation where we sit in at the moment. Councillor Loud.
Darren, from memory, in the photographs of that area, you had the main slip here, but there was another area which had the same characteristics further back up the road that was a possibility to also go. That's from my memory. This is going to resolve the main slip.
Yeah, yes, I think if it was in the photo, it would have been the same slip area. Yes, the photos went of a larger area than 60 metres. I think it was covered. So you had the sloppy bit, and then there was a kind of a deformation in the road. Is that
It was just from memory. Let's need to clarify that. It's solved the problem.
Thank you, councillor Loud. But that does bring to mind, of course, the fact that we did workshop this quite heavily in a council workshop when it first came to light. So, and that's a valid point. I'm trying to picture those pictures as well. It's we're just trying to get to a point where we can enable our staff to actually move on and take some action. Yeah, good point. Your worship.
Question. So this involves reprofiling and drainage. Not far above this site, there's a drop in the face by probably 2 or 3 metres minimum. What do you think the likelihood is that will continue to drop and that we will be back down this path with this later this winter?
I guess there's risk there, but this is a recommendation from WSP. They've had a geologist up there, a geotech engineer up there. No, that's what they've suggested. So he was all over that site as well. answering your question very well, but
Can I just,
taking advice from Geotex.
Yeah, Arno, you stepping on this one?
yes, please, if I may, Mr. Chair, I do think we've got to remember that none of us are geotech engineers. We are not registered as that. And I think it becomes an unfair question on a staff member to make a decision on. I think if that's information that we need, we'll take that on board and go and collect that information from suitably qualified people and bring it back. If that helps the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a question that's been asked to, what is the risks of further works being done? I guess is probably worthwhile having a little bit of an answer to that. But I can think of so many slips around our area where we've done work and continue to do work up the Turkana Valley, and we still continue to do them now and been doing them. I guess every job in some of these more remote areas, of which we have many kilometres of, carry a degree of risk of future failure. But Worship the Mayor is asking for some information on this one specifically, so if it can be obtained, I think it's worthwhile perhaps forwarding that onto His Worship directly, or would you rather see it as an action?
No, you know, when we come to speak to this motion, I'm prepared to support it. But I would also like to foreshadow that if this happens, that we cannot continue as a council to continue to fund this.
Okay, that would be a secondary one. So on the grounds of that,
I'm going to speak against the motion.
well, we haven't got the motion up yet because we haven't asked for it. Okay, we've got to move into speaking. So what we will do now is I will ask for speakers for and against the motion as per our normal. Councillor Moore, you've indicated that you would like to speak against. Your option is now.
Did the
The
mover
mover
speak?
gets to speak first, if he wants to.
Mover. Oh, me, isn't it? I'll reserve my my right of reply on that one. Councillor Moore.
I'm speaking against the motion because I'm worried that this is going to be a continual cost of money for one or two people that live up that road. I know it's unfortunate for them, but you know, this could be, it's $125,000 per person. There is some indication that, you know, that this could continue. And I think the better option would be to stop the road prior to the slip and maybe tidy it up so it's accessible, not spend all this sort of money on a low volume road. You mentioned, no, can't go into debate, but other roads like Turkana Valley have a lot of people living up there that need to be open. Yeah, I don't think this one is an important road that in the future that we may have to divest our interest in it. So I'll speak against the motion.
Thank you. Further speakers to the motion for or against? Councillor Shalom.
I would agree with Councillor Moore that I think we're creating a precedent by doing something like this, so we have to be very careful.
Further speakers, Your Worship.
I'll speak in favour of it with hesitation. And the reason I say this is because we've established precedents forever and a day about repairing roads. So that doesn't concern me. What does concern me is we talk about reprofiling a site that has already been reprofiled according to reports that we've had delivered to this chamber, including the redirection of water away from the site, etc. So this isn't a new action. This has already occurred to some degree, and it has been spectacularly unsuccessful. The road continued to drop at alarming rates. We have an obligation to provide access. And the reason I'm saying we go down this road now is that is a reasonable obligation, and the process for stopping a road is complex in itself and takes time. But if this drops substantially again, then I think that we're in a different ballgame here. The rates take from this area of land will never never make up the amount of money that we're spending and continuing to spend on this road. And somewhere there has to be a conversation, and I have raised this as a national level conversation in Wellington. And NZTA absolutely agrees. It's a common conversation at the moment. So prepared to support, but that is my concern.
Further speakers before I exercise right to reply? So I'm going to speak in support of it, although I hear exactly everything that you've said, Councillor Moore, but then Councillor Sheridan says, seeing a precedent, the fact to turn around and just say, well, we're not going to fix that, we should close this road, sets a bigger and more risky precedent, in my opinion. The fact that we have done some work on the road, my understanding was under basic emergency management to try and keep access to the farm. From what I'm reading in this is the repairs that are being suggested now are more substantial than what we've done before. They've been patch-up jobs and we're looking to do more. The reality of it is it's a dead-end road. There is no other access to it. It's an active farm and it does have a house. And, I agree, $350,000 and 34% of our local share cost is never going to be recovered in rates, but we do have an obligation. Currently now, it is a road that has failed that's on our assets register. Where being as unpalatable as it may be, we have an obligation to attend to this road. Once we've done that, we can then have secondary conversations. But the first matter needs to be dealt with is the one that we're faced with now. And then there could be some broader questions asked about a lot of other roads in our district. And that would be a completely different conversation to what we're having here. The fact of the matter is the road has failed. It is our road. It's on our network. We do need to take something about it. And try and do something about it as best we can for the least cost to our ratepayers. We have an obligation to do so. So on that basis, I would welcome further conversations at a later stage as to what options may be into the future with this road and or other roads. But that is subsequently a different conversation to what we're having now. So I'll take that as my right to reply. So I now must put the motion. Is everybody comfortable with the wording of the motion that is put, particularly noting that the local share is 34% of the total cost, which was the amended motion became the substantive motion. So with that, I now request that the motion be put. All those in favour? Those against? 2 recording against. Would you like your names recorded against? So we have Councillor Greg Moore recording against. Councillor Sheridan, you wish to be recorded against as well? And Councillor Sheridan, you want to do so. The basic thing is carried word. Noting those 2 against. Your worship.
With regard to this item, this isn't a foreshadowed motion, but I think it is absolutely part and parcel of understanding this. We had a meeting with Horizons the other day, and one of the issues that I raised in terms of the SLUI program that most of these farms are now part of should be amended, that there is a border above our infrastructure roading, that corridor should be planted in natives, not pines. And that was something that Horizons were accepting of in principle, because we will continue to see this road and other roads impacted by the harvest of pines.
Yeah, and I was at that meeting and I agree with that comment. But again, that is something that we need to take out as an action subject to the matter that we've just moved as further actions, because it does highlight and identify bigger issues around our district as a whole that we need to take a broader approach to. But Councillor Moore, you've got a question?
No, I would like to either make a motion about staff investigating the stoppage of this road once the repairs are done.
I'd like to see that be listed as an action rather than a motion, because I couldn't see it being put as a motion without any. We'd need to see a lot of information.
Yes, I've just under your direction.
I would suggest that if that's a direction, I'd want to know. I would refrain from saying the stopping of this road. I would refer to it more as the stopping of roads. Generally, would be a better approach.
Well, yeah, I think,
Because the same process applies no matter where the road is.
yeah, but if we do this road, then we get our process.
So could I suggest that the action might be some sort of information on what is involved in stopping a road and what is the legal implications of doing so? I think it's roads in general, because this won't be the only one in our district. I wouldn't want to see this particular road targeted unduly in that way. So I would think that if that's something that you'd like to see, we could have that as a general option.
There is already a guideline.
Yeah, so the council has indicated he'd like to know what's involved in that. So if we could have that come back to us or get forwarded to Councillor Moore in particular to understand, that would be appropriate if we can get that as an action. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I also confirm whether or not the committee wanted an action around the risk of further work being needed on the road? There was discussion around that being an action, whether or not that is an action after you've made that decision.
I don't know that we can understand the risk of there being further issues on there until such time as we've dealt with the work that we're going to do. So that would come secondary, would be my thinking. But Worship, you raised that question. Was there something you'd like to see?
There's a potential action, one in terms of horizons, in terms of the SLUI program, which has funding considerations. The second potential action is in with our own district planning regulations. So as part of our planning documents, we could look at the requirement to protect our infrastructure in terms of planting. If you go up the Turkana Valley Road, for instance, you will see pines that have been planted directly above the road. It is a common issue and we should be being proactive on it.
Is there some way that we can capture that? I'm just not sure that we're going to get the answer to that. I absolutely acknowledge the concern and it's very valid. But how do we, what does that look like to come back? So there's got to be some future work on it. Maybe it's a workshop matter at the next assets meeting that we could actually address all of these. Our next assets meeting is a workshop. Perhaps all these matters could be raised then so that we can get a greater understanding of what the direction staff may need to take or what it is that we're seeking.
I see it as an action listed against any future policy work in terms of planning documents.
I think maybe we can get some clarity around this one because it's going to get quite muddled as to what the staff are trying to do here.
That's, if I may, Mr. Chair, I would suggest let's go back to the planners, ask them what's involved in something like that and get more structure around that request so we can kind of decide how to deal with it.
I'm also sensing that there's 3 or 4 different departments within council that would be involved in coming back with this range of questions, and I don't think we're going to solve that right now. So
we'll do that.
Just conscious of workloads as well.
yeah, and there's this huge amount of workload. So I think we just need to clarify this one a little bit further, perhaps at a subsequent get together to be sure. So we can just park that one wee bit. Could be my suggestion. Councillor Wong.
Could I just add one thing to it? The planting of native trees above a slip like this as a general discussion, I would understand going to a workshop for further, but in this specific case, could this be noted that we would perhaps like the geotech and the engineers on this case to perhaps include that if it's a remediation or a some sort of thing that would help perhaps
Decide what is the ongoing.
in this particular project, yes.
Yeah, you got that down. Does that make sense to you?
Part of it.
That is part of it.
Very stable plant, but it takes 3 to 5 years for those trees to start taking effect.
Okay, does that answer your question there, Councillor? Right, thank you. Again, good discussion. Good to thrash that one out. We're moving through now to recommendation 3. Fairly detailed report on this. I don't know that there's too much discussion around this particular item that I could see. Anything to discuss on this particular item, recommendation 3, Your Worship?
Just a question. This is a bridge we've spent quite a lot of money on. Is it an abutment issue or is it a structural damage to the actual bridge?
I'm sorry, I don't know. Hastings are managing the project. Lee Taylor has been liaising with them, and to her credit, she's knocked quite a few thousand out of their proposal. So, but yeah, the details of that I can get back to you if you want.
I'd be interested later because the process around the repair work was difficult for our council, but previously.
Something that you have some knowledge on there that you might want to seek some clarity on it. I simply looked at the item and go, we're in a situation where we have a shared bridge on a significant road. It requires our local share value to have the works completed. I'm happy to move recommendation 3 as worded, seeking a seconder.
Just confirming that you're moving to approve.
Oh, to approve, sorry, yep. Looking for a seconder, councillor Loudon, thank you. Discussion on? Being none, all those in favour? Against, motion duly carried, thank you. Item 10.2. Consent compliance report, April 25. Arno, looking to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll just step the committee through this one quickly. The first part is compliance with the water takes. So you can see for the last up until March, that's compliant for all of them, all our water takes. The next portion is the one I just want to spend a bit of time on. So this is compliance with specifically with protozoa and E. coli. So the rates there are generally related to rain events where turbidity in the rivers and the streams go up. And we then have challenges to remain compliant because it's more difficult for the UV to work. There's other things that come into play once the turbidities go up. What's important though is although that is the case, I'll show you further on, it does not mean the water was not suitable for use. It just means we couldn't keep recording that specific item that's requested by the rule. So that is applicable to pools, to Hunterville. And then you'll notice that Malawika and Martin, they were compliant. So there's Ratana, and then Tai Happy. Interesting, Tai Happy is the contact time. If the flows are too high, the water moves through those structures too fast, and we can't achieve the contact times. And that would have been the issue with the Tai Happy take. So if you then look at the next page, compliance with Rule B3, this is where we look at the quality of the water in the networks, and that's all compliant. So although we could not measure those specific parameters at certain times during rain, the water was still compliant for use. And then the last one, D2, that was compliant as well. So any questions on the water compliance?
Just very quickly for me, so I accept your explanation around the non-compliance, and it's continued my time on council. It's been created difficulties for very similar reasons. Have we had any notifications to or from Horizons or any outside agents regarding any of these non-compliance and our reporting?
Yes, there's a very, very strict structure around non-compliance of drinking water with Te Mata Arawai, so we comply with all of that.
Yep. So nobody has, we've got nothing pending, sitting there, issues relating, no.
So they're completely aware of all of this and there's nothing.
Yes, okay, thank you for that. No further questions from around the table on this section of today's meeting, and 2.2 compliance report. I'm not seeing any. That leads us to the completion of the open part of today's meeting. We do have, I'll move from the chair that the report be received. Thank you, seconded councillor Carter. All those in favour? Against, motion is carried. That completes, as I was saying there, that completes the open section of today's meeting. We do have a matter to discuss in public excluded. The details of the reasons for moving public excluded have been listed in today's order paper. I'm happy to accept those as being a valid reason. I'll move from the chair that moved public excluded, seconded councillor Carter. All those in favour? Against, that motion is carried. Thank you for those that are on time. Thank you for your continued interest in our programs. Thank you.